Teachers' attitudes, perspectives, and beliefs regarding information communication technologies in education. In this analysis, teachers' attitudes, perspectives, and beliefs toward ICT refer to educators' general perceptions about the attributes and usefulness of ICT, educators' level of confidence or self-efficacy when integrating ICT, and teachers' views regarding the role and effects that ICT have on teaching and learning. It is an important theme because, as many researchers note, educators' attitudes, beliefs, and perspectives toward ICT have been identified as key influences on integration of ICT, and that information communication technologies can have a profound effect on enhancing student learning and transforming teaching practice. Methods. The 15 research studies were published between 2001 and 2013 in 11 peer-reviewed educational technology journals. The studies were selected using the Education Resources Information Center database. The title keyword search terms were teacher or educator in combination with beliefs, attitudes, or perspectives regarding information communication technologies. Additionally, the studies for this analysis were selected to ensure geographic coverage and a variety of participants and types of data. The purposes of the studies also varied, from examining existing attitudes toward ICT to measuring changes in perceptions due to ICT training. 4 of the studies collected both qualitative and quantitative data, 4 studies collected qualitative data, and the remaining 7 collected quantitative data. The sample sizes ranged from 14 to 326. Participants in 6 of the studies were pre-service teachers, while the other 8 studies investigated experienced K-12 teachers and 1 studied college instructors. The studies were conducted in 10 countries on 4 continents. Findings. An iterative process of annotating, rereading, and coding the findings, conclusions, and implications of the studies revealed 4 main categories of the theme. A. General perceptions of the attributes and usefulness of ICT. B. Educators' perceived self-efficacy or confidence with ICT. C. Teachers' beliefs regarding the role and effects of ICT in education. And D. Perceived hindrances of ICT use in education. General perceptions of the attributes and usefulness of ICT. First, all 15 studies reported generally positive attitudes toward information communication technologies among participants. However, Sapila and Teo found that primary teachers held significantly more positive perceptions of ICT than secondary teachers. As well, generally positive attitudes toward ICT did not predict ICT integration. For example, Abbott and Klett noted that positive information communication technology attitudes did not significantly influence teachers' perceived ability to integrate ICT. Baerbach found that ICT training positively affected some ICT attitudes, but did not significantly affect teachers' attitudes toward ICT integration. Similarly, Teo and Noyes found that teachers' positive perceptions of ICT were not a significant influence on teachers' intentions to integrate information communication technologies in the classroom. Researchers also uncovered factors that positively and negatively affect attitudes toward ICT. Alberini and Teo and Noyes found a significant relationship between positive attitudes and perceived ease of use of ICT. Experience with information communication technologies also positively affected ICT perceptions. Teo reported a positive correlation between teachers' years of computer experience, or lack of experience, and attitudes toward information communication technologies. Likewise, researchers found a positive correlation between positive ICT attitudes and frequent computer use and practice teaching with ICT. In addition to lack of ICT experience, Alberini and Teo and Noyes found that perceived complexity of ICT also negatively affected information communication technology attitudes. Educators' perceived self-efficacy with ICT. To some extent, most of the studies examined the role of perceived self-efficacy on attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions of ICT. Studying the effects of ICT training programs, 2 researchers found increases in teachers' perceived confidence when ICT training focused broadly on ICT tools and educational uses. They also found that ICT training that focused narrowly on specific tools had no significant effect on ICT self-confidence. McAllister identified a significant correlation between observing classroom modeling of information communication technologies and perceived self-efficacy. Observing classroom ICT use was also identified by Turrell and Johnson as a positive influence on self-efficacy. Ertmer and Uzimbolu found a positive correlation between high levels of perceived self-efficacy and high frequency of ICT use. Finally, 5 studies found direct relationships between perceived self-efficacy and information communication technology integration. Teachers' beliefs regarding the role of ICT in education. 4 themes emerged regarding the perceived role of ICT in education. 4 studies reported that teachers perceived student motivation as a main benefit of ICT integration. Researchers also found that many teachers perceived ICT as supplementary to learning. The studies also revealed that ICT is perceived by many educators as primarily a tool for communicating with students and presenting course material. A small number of participants in 4 studies perceived ICT as requiring changes to teaching practice and its use as central to constructivist learning. Perceived hindrances to integration of ICT. Regardless of their levels of ICT integration, perceived self-efficacy, or ICT attitudes, educators in almost half of the studies perceived time constraints as key hindrances to ICT integration. Turrell and Johnson noted that high numbers of exemplary ICT teachers perceived a lack of time for students' use of ICT. Joshi and Phelps and Madison found a lack of time for training as limiting adoption of ICT, and Benson reported the perceived increase in course preparation time as the main barrier to ICT integration. Similarly, Zhao reported that almost all participants perceived lack of time to prepare ICT lessons as integration limitation. Researchers also found that traditional structures limited ICT integration. Some noted that teachers perceived class time as too short for computer use, and that many traditional teaching practices, structures, and the demands of curriculum were somewhat incompatible with ICT integration. Discussion. Generally positive attitudes toward ICT were identified by researchers as a factor for ICT integration. However, many researchers found a significant correlation between perceived self-efficacy and ICT integration. Moreover, some studies showed that high confidence with ICT was not a requirement for information communication technologies integration, and that many teachers who perceived their self-efficacy as average frequently integrated information communication technologies into their lessons. Perceived ICT self-efficacy was influenced by frequent ICT use, broadly focused ICT training, and opportunities to observe modeled use of ICT. In respect to attitudes about the role of ICT in education, researchers found that educators' attitudes ranged from ICT as enhancing student learning through increased communication, content presentation, and student motivation, to ICT as transforming teaching and learning through providing opportunities for constructivist learning, and through stimulating change in teaching practice. Conclusion. All of the studies reported a general level of acceptance of ICT in education, and since the studies were conducted in 10 countries on 4 continents, this acceptance appears to have global reach. Experience using ICT was a predictor of positive ICT attitudes in several studies. In 4 studies, positive ICT attitudes alone did not predict ICT integration, but in 5 studies, researchers found that positive ICT attitudes in combination with high perceived self-efficacy did predict high frequency of ICT integration. However, the relationships between ICT integration, self-efficacy, constructivist ITC beliefs and constructivist ITC practice remain unclear. For instance, 3 studies found that teachers who reported high ICT use and self-efficacy and who held constructivist beliefs did not often use ICT in ways that matched constructivist learning best practices as it's described in literature. Implications. The implications for school divisions and pre-service programs include a need to create conditions conducive to building ICT confidence and changing ICT teaching practices. For pre-service programs, this means providing ICT training that offers a broad focus of ICT use, modeled ICT integration strategies, and frequent opportunities to practice ICT instructional methods. School divisions and higher educational institutions need a commitment to providing time for ICT lesson planning and for ICT training in the manner just described. Finally, future research on this theme should further investigate influences on self-efficacy and should systematically investigate specific training and support activities that affect educators' ITC self-efficacy and its relationship to changing teaching practice. Limitations. This investigation was limited by participants' unequal access to ICT in their schools. Many researchers noted the subjective nature of self-reporting attitudes, beliefs, and perspectives as a limitation. Similarly, 2 researchers noted that levels of self-efficacy were difficult to measure because it was self-reported in relation to colleagues' ICT use. Finally, only 1 study focused specifically on the beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes of educators with high perceived self-efficacy with information communication technologies.